The next order of business is to approve the minutes of the June 5th meeting.
I move to approve the minutes of the June 5th meeting. Looks like Paul.
I move to approve the minutes of the June 5th meeting.
Okay,
I'll second that.
okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The meeting minutes are approved. The next item on the agenda is the consideration of a request for approval of the demolition of the existing residence at 1500 North Sheridan Road and approval of the replacement residence and associated site and landscape plans. The owners are Dan and Leigh Bruhn, and the representative is Scott Streightiff, architect. Welcome. I'm sorry, I should at this time also ask any board members if anyone has a conflict on this?
I have conflict, and I will recuse myself from this discussion.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Scott Streightiff, and I will be presenting this petition tonight on behalf of the owners, Dan and Leigh Bruhn. Unfortunately, the property owners are unable to attend tonight due to a scheduling conflict with their vacation and the change of the date for tonight's meeting. The primary intent of this petition is to request the approval for the demolition of the structure located at 1500 North Sheridan Road. The application is requested in order to construct an approximately 4,200 square foot new residence and attached three-car garage on the site. The proposed new house complies with all zoning, bulk, and building scale requirements for the 24,700 square foot lot. This stretch of Sheridan Road is characterized by a variety of architectural styles with a mix of smaller homes as well as more gracious, newly constructed homes set off the street. Here are a few examples of the neighboring properties. These are a few of the properties across the street. This is a newer constructed home up to the north of the subject property. Again, a few more kind of in the surrounding neighborhood. This is the property immediately to the north of the to the south of the subject property, and this is immediately to the north of the subject property. And this then is across the street viewing the subject property, and then in the backyard. And this is the subject property. After thoroughly researching the history of 1500 Sheridan Road, we found no information that would individually or collectively be of special historic, architectural, aesthetic, cultural, and or ecological significance to the city. According to the previous owner who lived here for many years, the structure itself was a Sears kit home with various additions added on over the years off the back. This building, built in the 1950s, was one of many buildings built in this subdivision. It was not the first house built, and there is no other relevance pertaining to the time it was built. The architectural style of the building does not reflect any high standards of architectural design or craftsmanship that represent any significant period of residential development. Most of the exterior of the building is clad in aluminum siding. A few more pictures. This is showing some of the additions off the back of the property. Sorry here. Alternatives to demolition have been explored in depth, but are not realistic for several reasons. First, while the structural members are relatively intact, substantial repairs and remodeling are necessary to accommodate the current family's programmatic requirements as well as to conform to current building codes. There is currently no basement. The home is built on a slab with a very shallow crawl space under the first floor deck. The concrete crawl space has been compromised with cracks and is currently taking on water, and there's no sump pump down there. The grading of the home sits significantly lower than the two newer constructed neighboring properties, so it collects a lot of water and stays damp after long periods of rain and snow melt in the middle of the property. We've investigated reusing the essential structure of the existing house to renovate the property so that it will be suitable for the owner's needs and provide a new full foundation below the existing structure. The result of this renovation would be considered a partial demolition, and the result would be quite similar to the architectural style and size of the proposed new home. What's preventing us from doing this, however, is the existing home is in need of such extensive repair and really lacks materials of lasting quality. The majority of the house would be replaced, given that there's no full foundation, in need of higher ceilings. I think the second floors are 7-foot ceilings. New kitchens, new bathrooms, fixtures, etc. Also, as mentioned, the grading of the home sits significantly lower than the two neighboring newly constructed properties and should be set at a level so that the stormwater can flow naturally. So the extent of work required to adaptively reuse the existing home would be cost prohibitive and is not really a sound investment. If the demolition is approved, however, the owners do intend to recycle as many materials as possible, as well as donate reusable fixtures and finishes to Habitat for Humanity. The Bruhns have lived in Lake Forest for many years and are very interested in maintaining both the character of the neighborhood and their home. They've been sensitive in proposing a new home that meets their individual needs while maintaining the traditional style and character of Sheridan Road. This is the proposed site plan, which shows the outline of the existing home and the dotted line here. The new home is sited in almost the identical spot as the existing structure. This is the front elevation. The proposed house has precedent in both form and composition, with examples of early American colonial or Georgian style homes. The form has precedent not only in Lake Forest, but reflects an historic architectural style that dominated the English colonies for most of the 18th century. The proposed design exemplifies an understated character and uses high-quality traditional materials and details. The exterior is composed of natural materials such as Chicago common brick for the main body of the house and clapboard siding on the wings. The windows are clad with simulated true divided lights and traditional wood shutters with operable hardware. The roof is cedar shingle with copper gutters and downspouts. The white painted exterior trim will be enhanced at the side porches and the bay windows. The wings are designed with clapboard siding to appear subordinate to the masonry veneer on the main house. This is the west elevation. This is the west elevation in the rear of the property, with a bit more of an informal character leading off to the rear terraces, and more of a human scale with a consistent one-story eave line. This is the south elevation, which will primarily be up against a fair amount of landscape screening to the neighboring property to the south. And then this is the streetscape elevation, which shows its relationship to the neighboring properties, fairly similar scale. Finally, a landscape plan has been prepared by Ann Flannery from the Beaded Garden. The plan identifies the major plantings proposed, as well as screening to the neighboring properties. There's also an engineering plan in your packets, I believe, prepared by Mike Bleck from Bleck Engineering, which identifies the proposed tree removal and addresses the topography issues and stormwater runoff. So in conclusion, the proposed project satisfies the programmatic needs of the owners and will generally improve the overall appearance of the property on Sheridan Road. Our objective is to create a sensitive design and a home that would contribute to the architectural heritage of Lake Forest. No neighbors would be adversely impacted by the new home, as there are no zoning or building scale variances requested. So for these reasons, we would like to request that this petition be approved, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Staff, would you like to identify issues related to this petition, please?
Thank you, Chairman King. There are two requests before the board this evening: the request for demolition of the existing home, as well as the design of the replacement structure and associated site and landscape plans. In general, the project meets the standards in the code. The petitioner did talk about the existing condition, primarily the fact that the existing house really sits in a bowl on the site. It's very low compared to the other properties in the neighborhood, and has been, over the years, flooded constantly, causing deterioration of the foundation and some of the structural members. With respect to the replacement structure, the level of detail is appropriate for the neighborhood and consistently applied to all 4 elevations. I just wanted to comment on a couple technical points regarding this petition. When staff first reviewed this project, engineering staff did identify a need to improve the drainage on the site. When you walk on the property, it is very damp, and as I mentioned before, it is a low property. By working with the petitioner, we did receive the engineering drawings a little bit later in the process than we normally would, but given the current drawings that have been submitted and the amount of information that we have at this point, we are comfortable bringing it forward to the Building Review Board for consideration at this time, recognizing that a solution is achievable on this property. We will continue to work with the petitioner and work to minimize the fill that's needed to improve the drainage on the property, and as well as protect as many trees on the perimeter that can be protected. Certainly, as those pieces are finalized, if any significant changes are results to the design for some reason or the footprint, we can certainly bring this project back to the board for further consideration if the board does choose to support this project this evening. Based on the review of the standards, this project does appear to be consistent with the standards in the code, and staff is recommending approval of the project. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Megan. Okay, any questions or requests from the board to either the petitioner or staff?
I just have a couple questions for you, please. Just some material clarifications. I noticed you said the main bulk of the house is going to be the Chicago common brick.
Correct.
Is that also true for the portion of the garage that's closest to the house, the wider portion? Okay.
Yes, there's going to be a two-car garage. Essentially, there'll be brick, and
And
then
then
that's the
you're-
last stall. The one car would be clapboard siding.
Okay. And if I look at the north elevation, is it that you're not showing the front porch, or you're dashing that in so we can see what's behind it?
The the screen porch in the back of the house is actually an option that the property owners would like to do. However, it's really a budgetary thing. You know, after we develop it and do, you know, that might be something that they do later. Their goal would be to do it, but I think that they want to see how the costs of the project come in, and if they can, they will choose to probably do the screen porch.
And then just continuing on that elevation, the arched opening just to the right of the garage door, that's
the side entry.
That's the side entry, and you have dashed the front
Oh,
porch.
yes, you are correct.
Okay.
So the front porch is dashed in, yes.
And the arched opening, is that brick or is that painted wood?
That's painted white, and then there's sort of a horizontal tongue and V-groove, or kind of a herringbone tongue and V groove board on the inside of that porch.
And staff had some comments in their staff report. One was regarding providing some screening on the north and south property lines. Is that something that your client would be willing to do?
Absolutely. I'm not exactly sure what the ordinance is in terms of the tree removal and the inch-for-inch replacement, but I think there's a lot of replacement that needs to be made up, and so that would be made up in the form of screening for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
What storm management challenges were faced in developing the plan, the engineering plan?
I think actually Mike would probably be better to address that question, but I, I think really the property to the south sits 2 or 3 feet higher than this property, and then the property to the north sits about a foot higher than this property. and then it kind of grades back up to Sheridan Road. So it's sort of a level, consistent slope going down Sheridan Road, but the middle of the property just really kind of goes into a bowl. So I think it's just really a matter of, that coupled with the fact that the arborist was out to the site, and a large amount of the trees are diseased. I think there's quite a few ashes on the property that are going to need to be removed, which is unfortunate, but it does allow us the opportunity to then raise the grade back up in the middle of the property, so that it's sort of just a consistent line of topography going from the property to the
South.
Yeah, correct.
By adding that 3 feet of fill, you would have ordinarily lost those trees if otherwise they would have required retention or
Correct.
welling or some other function.
Correct.
So is it Mike's opinion that with normal engineering practices, this property should drain appropriately to Sheridan Road,
Yes.
unless there's an inlet in the rear? The storm sewerage in that location of Sheridan Road is sufficient to accommodate?
I believe so, but I think he's got a swale designed around, from the rear of the property, designed around the perimeter and coming up. So the idea is that water would flow naturally rather than trying to rely on mechanical, drainage. I mean, I think we'll probably supplement it with a little bit of mechanical stormwater drainage, but to try and get the majority of the runoff to just occur naturally.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm going to make you go back up there again, sorry. It appears that the demolition criteria is met. So we're really working on the architectural review. My only comment relates to the north elevation. No, hold on, sorry about that. The south elevation. And really, it's the kind of the regular arrangement of the openings. And I got a feeling that one window is the garage window,
Correct.
right? So I think with the addition of maybe another window or a more regular arrangement, it meets the criteria.
Okay.
So, Bob, do you have a concern with that window, that south-facing window in the garage, in terms of its aesthetic?
Only in an architectural design.
Because that is that's the money shot. The majority of the traffic on Sheridan at that location is probably heading northerly, so that's what you're faced with. That is the first appearance. And how does the landscaping address the back of that
I was just going to
garage?
say, I think the majority of the backside of that garage is going to be up against, large arborvitaes or some evergreen screening between the neighboring properties. I'm not sure if it shows that in the landscape plan. It shows a row of the arborvitae, but probably it's the back of the garage is only 12 feet from the property line. So if an arborvitae is 5 or 6 feet wide at the base, it's going to be only another 5 or 6 feet to the garage. But having said that, I certainly would be open to adding more windows along that. It might be nice even just to do that, to get some additional light into the garage, if you think that's necessary for the design.
Well, and you have the opportunity, of course, it adds the expense of a couple additional windows, but you have the opportunity to align them with the dormers above. And
I agree.
Could you stand on that, that elevation? What is that element above the, I guess that's a kitchen. Is that a skylight or what is that?
More of like a conservatory type window that would be, you know, on the, I mean, essentially a skylight, but a little bit more decorative than
Gotcha.
that. So, and would be centered over the main island in the kitchen. This is the first floor plan. So the kitchen is off in that area, and then right above that main island would be that conservatory window.
That looks like it's, the height of that might intrude a little bit upon the sight line from one of the bedrooms upstairs. Any concern with that at all?
I think it's an all glass structure, so it hopefully will pull off as a little bit translucent.
And so it looks like it's not a flat roof, you have a slight slope to that roof at that,
That's correct.
but the glass itself will not be sloping. I imagine it'll be square to the,
It'll be
Ground.
kind of pyramidal and, you know, like a hipped roof.
okay. And then, the garage, could you pull up the, I guess it'd be the, north elevation, please? It looks like the garage would, I guess, be furthest to the east there, which is offset a little bit. It looks like the materials area is gonna be a different garage door plan there than the other two?
That was the thought. I mean, I think, you know, 3 garage doors you maybe tend to get a little bit monotonous or redundant, and so the idea was to really set that last stall apart from the two, you know, the 2 other garage doors.
Okay. And then also on that facade, and I think on the front you have a patio, a second-story patio there. Could you talk about the materials you're going to use there for the railings?
It would be a wood railing with wood newels and balusters. Yeah, obviously, the detail of that would probably come out during the design development, but you know, the idea is that there's going to be quite a bit of white painted, smooth textured trim, not rough sawn, but more of a smooth texture, painted in kind of a semi-gloss finish, and that wood railing would sort of go along with
Would be the
rest
white
of
as well?
porch. Correct.
Okay. And out there on the property, I noticed in the back, it appears it's on the subject property's footprint, is a chain link fence. Is that, does that come
be
down?
removed.
That is, okay, good.
Yeah, that.
Yeah, there it is. Okay.
Yep.
That's all I have, thanks.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay. At this point, chance for anybody from the public to come up and ask questions, testify. Okay, seeing none. Any final questions from the board to the petitioner or staff?
I have
Okay.
one last question. With regard to the north elevation, we were just looking at, we discussed the 3 garage doors, and Monica had mentioned clarified the arched side entry. What is the architectural thought behind the arch relative to the balance of the level windows and doors throughout the house?
Well, I think it works with the architecture. I mean, I would be certainly open to squaring it off. I guess the architectural thought would just be to have a little bit of a variety, or, you know, sometimes it works to have things that are a little bit unexpected in a design. That was really it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, this time, the board shall take it to discussion. Anyone want to kick it off here?
Well,
Well, should we talk about the demolition first?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so I think, because that's separate, I think the architect has made a pretty strong case for the removal of the structure. It doesn't seem to be historical in nature. I mean, it's a nice little Sears kit, but without the basement and the water issues beneath it and the structure, I could support the demolition of the project, or the home.
I'm in agreement. Any
Yeah, I
pushback
concur.
on the demolition, guys?
Not
at
at all,
all,
I
or-
concur, it's
No.
exactly.
Okay, great.
Do you want to piecemeal it? We can do the demolition now.
Let's go on to the replacement structure, because the demolition is part of the replacement structure. We gotta approve that, so. Any thoughts on,
No, I think
Sure.
it meets the criteria. And especially with the suggestion that we can maybe put a couple extra windows in there, I think it meets everything.
okay, all right. Anyone else?
Well, I think insofar as that it's meeting a Georgian style, I think the detailing is all there. I think, there's a nice quality in materials, a good proportion. The only concern I really have is the length of the garage. And because of that, and the south elevation of the garage, when you're driving north on Sheridan Road, I think to me, it seems, for lack of a better word, plain, sort of too plain, and then the dormers aren't evenly spaced along that roof, and I understand why they're not because of the way the interior works, but I find that really the only part of the project that I think could see some improvement. Thus, I thought, well, maybe the screening, perhaps adding, a window down on the first level might help that, but I don't think it's gonna make a huge difference, to be honest, so. But I think, stylistically, it's pretty nicely detailed. And the arch at the secondary door, I think it's a nice way to set it off. It's not the front door. The front door is the grand Georgian entrance, and then you have your little, side door, so. And, you've got the arch and the dormer up at the front, and I think there's a arch top on one of the other sides, so I thought it was nice.
Well, I agree with the comments. I am bothered, though, by the massing of the garage structure and its exposure to Sheridan Road, so I do think that requires some additional attention. The windows, the plant material, year-round plant material is important. Maybe even the consideration, although I agree with your, the surprise element of the arch entry, that adds a nice twist to the design. On the other hand, that entry itself adds an additional 6 feet or so to that garage extension and adds considerable bulk. Was there any thought given to eliminating that or locating that entry elsewhere so that the garage retreats?
Sure, come on up.
Yeah, I think what's also driving the extent of that, or the 6 feet where the side entry is trying to incorporate the back stair, which is, really helps the second floor circulation. But I certainly, am open to either working with a subcommittee or developing, the south elevation so that it's, more appropriate, perhaps maybe trying to work with the second floor plan to get the dormers so that they're more equally spaced there and add a few windows. It's certainly something I'm sure the property owners would be open to and I would be open to.
Okay, thanks. I agree with the thoughts and comments of my fellow board members. I think it's a nice-looking project. I think the materials are very nice, the brick and, the roofing materials, the copper gutters. I think that's going to be nice quality, and I'm excited to see that. I do think that south elevation, I have a problem with it. The massing is very large, and I would like to see some improvements there. I guess I'd throw it back to the rest of my board members. Do you think that's something that we need to see again, or are we comfortable that if the petitioner works with city staff that they can hammer this thing out?
Is that one of the things that it could just go to a subcommittee and then get approved with staff? Can that just go through, like, if it goes to a subcommittee, can it just be approved, like, with the subcommittee and not have to come in front of the full board?
Yes, if you simply direct refinement of that south elevation, you can charge a subcommittee with granting final approval. They can certainly bring it back if they weren't able to reach resolution, but it sounds like generally the project is acceptable to the full board, so that would be appropriate if you want a subcommittee, or alternatively delegated to staff. I think the architect has indicated a willingness to work on that, and I think that solution is pretty simple between refinement as well as assuring there's year-round landscaping in the area.
I'm pretty comfortable with the staff. I think,
As am I.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Okay.
I agree.
Okay. All right, any other comments issue? I think we're generally supportive here. And we go to move, I think we should move on the demolition first, and then after that, the replacement structure?
Can I just add one more thing about,
Sure.
like, the drawings are very nice, but they're almost like sketch form, so we don't have the exact detailing of the eaves and such, so that when we do the approval, just so that staff would make sure that the detailing is appropriate to the Georgian style. So far, I mean, it looks really good, but you know how things change, so.
Okay.
All right. Well, I move to approve the demolition and replacement structure, 1500 North Sheridan Road. Is based on the findings as stated in the staff report. The complete staff report, the materials included in the packet, and the public testimony are incorporated as part of the findings here today, subject to the conditions and the delegation to staff for the final work out of that south elevation.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right, passes 4-0. Congratulations. Welcome back, Mike.
Michael.
The next item on the agenda is consideration of a request for approval of a partial demolition of the existing residence located at 500 Ridge Road and approval of additions and alterations to the residence. The owners are June and Hiram Park, and the representative is David Poulton, architect. Welcome.
Might need a hand getting my USB. Do I just plug it into this port? Okay. Good evening, Chairman and members of the board. I'm David Poulton, and I'm presenting on behalf of June and Hiram Park, who have recently purchased this property. They've resided in Lake Forest for many years and have fallen in love with the property, not only for the character of the building, but also for how it sits on the site. It's a large piece of property, about 2.5 acres. There is a buildable lot that is not included in the parcel with the property to the south that's been split off of this property. The building has been added on to many times over its history, and some of these additions are there's not a great harmony between the additions. They're not in sync with each other, and it's our intent to consolidate the additions and clean them up, provide an end product with consistent architecture, and most importantly, a floor plan that works for their family. So this is the view from the driveway, looking from Ridge Road. It's a very symmetrical building. The original building is very symmetrical, with a central access down the main driveway to the front door. This is actually an original drawing of the building. It was designed in 1937 for George Silverthorne. The building was originally a fairly small scale, quaint type building. Very simple in nature, very symmetrical, nicely detailed, but the spaces are very small. Really no front entry, no overhang at the front, a doorway that walks right into the main stairway, no closet space. You step into a dining room. There was a library to the left, living room to the south, and then to the right, the room off of the dining room was actually the gun room, and small kitchen, pantry, and a two-car garage. The Silverthornes didn't own the property for very long, and in 1945, Norman Intu made some changes. He removed the porch that was to the south of the property on the living room and added a bay window, and then added a sun porch off to the west in the yellow in the middle of the building. At another point in time, we don't know the date, on the upper drawing to the right, the yellow portion was added, probably a response to needing a mudroom type room and those facilities on the residence, as there is no utilitarian space in that part of the building. In 1988, another addition was put onto the building. This one actually transformed the look of the building quite a bit. The garage was turned into a family room, a needed space on the floor plan, and a mudroom back entry was added to the north along with a three-car garage. This was also added, it was all two-story space above this with bedroom space and bathrooms above. The original building had the two gables flanking the front entry, and in this solution, a third gable was added to the north, and the gambrel roof line that connects the two gable ends was extended to the north. So in essence, we have a repeat of the roof lines that were existing on the building. Then in 1997, the sun porch that was put on in 1945 was removed, and a much larger sunroom was put into the back of the building. I think most of these additions were in response to the house being originally designed with very small, quaint spaces. And the circulation patterns were probably not consistent with what families were looking for at this point in time, and this large space created a family space and created circulation across the rear of the building, although in doing so, it really cut off the central part of the building, the original foyer, dining room, and library from sunlight and natural light to the rear of the building. This is the most recent entry vestibule addition. I'm not exactly sure what year this was done, but again, in response to very tight space at the front door. So what we have here is comparing the original configuration from 1937 to what we have today. As you can see, the house is much, much larger. The scale has changed considerably. So that has had some negative effects really on the appearance of the building from the exterior. So once again, comparing the original drawing at the top to what we have today. This is the addition that was added in 1988, the third gable and the garage wing. The garage is to the north. And this is adds quite a bit of length to the building, and in a sense makes the building lopsided to the right side to the north. This is the view from the southeast corner. You can see the addition that was put in, the front entry vestibule addition that was recently added, and the bay window that was added in 1945. This is the 1997 rear porch addition, which really kind of swallows up the rear of the house. The original integrity of the building is somewhat lost, and the design is very much inconsistent with the original building. Another view showing the additions across the rear of the house, and once again the addition to the north being fairly massive and overpowering the central massing of the original building. Again, the front entry vestibule, which has it served a purpose with creating some more space, but there are some details on this building that really are not that consistent with the original architecture. So our intent is to remove this large portion of the building, this large one-story sunroom off the back of the building, and then add 2 projections to the west, which would be carrying the main gables through the building, projecting them further to the west. So some of the reasons on the interior of the building that we are proposing this solution is that the main foyer is very cramped, closed off. It's inconsistent with the scale of what the size of the building is now. The library is closed off from natural light and becomes an interior room. The front entry walks pretty much straight into the dining room in a very informal way, so all the traffic patterns walk right through the dining room. The gun room is a room off the dining room that really serves no purpose. The kitchen needs to be remodeled. Family room and garage are adequate and are going to remain as they are. On the second floor, the ceiling heights are actually very low. The wall heights are 6'7", with very long, low hallways. The master bedroom has a very small bath and very little closet area. There are 2 decent bedrooms in the middle of the house, but with the proposed changes, those become altered. There are 2 very small servants type bedrooms in the middle of the house, and then long hallways that cut through rooms to get to the addition over the garage with the bedrooms and the bathrooms. So it's our intent to come up with a consistent plan that cleans up all these issues. And so on the first floor, the solution is to actually remove the stairway at the center and continue this very strong axis all the way from Ridge Road down the driveway, through the motor court, through the front door, through the foyer, and then open the views up to the back courtyard, which are centered on the main body of the house. The ceilings in the house now are 8'4", which are very low for a house this scale. So the foyer would have open space up to the second floor, creating some relief from these low stair lines. The gallery at the back of the stair to the west would connect the living room to the kitchen family area, and then there would be flanking the center axis would be the study on the left and the eating area on the right. The gun room, which presently really serves no purpose, becomes a connection between the dining room and the kitchen. Family room remains where it is, and garage remains where it is. Second floor, I won't go into all the detail, but the gallery on the second floor stacks above the first. It cleans up circulation patterns, provide ample bedrooms and bathrooms throughout the house, and cleans up the low ceiling issues. So these are really 2 of the same shots. I've just increased the size of the main body of the house to show that what we are doing is really preserving this very strong central axis. What we are doing is raising the roof line up approximately 2 feet. We are maintaining the central 3 dormer windows projecting through the roof line as they currently do. Between those 3 dormer windows, what is currently a gambrel roof will now become an extension of the brick wall. And then we are proposing a hipped roof which spans the wider building across to the rear gallery. So it solves a lot of the problems of encompassing the smaller spaces, creates taller ceiling heights. And I think what's also very important is that now there is a better order of massing where the additions from 1988 become subordinate to the main facade. So similar character on the back, where the main body of the house is very symmetrical. We've got the gallery running across the back, a brick above that. And again, showing how the main body becomes, or the body to the left that is fairly massive now becomes subordinate to the main body. This is the north elevation, which really no changes will be evident. Oops. And this is the south elevation, where we are adding new windows on the second floor into the master suite and then extending the master to the west with the study below. These are overlays showing how the existing relates to the new. So the roof line will be higher, approximately 7.5 feet. The roof line between the original building and the 1988 addition will remain at the same height. So in summary, this proposal complies with all governing codes, ordinances, setbacks, the building scale, and the original historical character of the building is respected. We're trying to maintain and carry original details throughout the added details on the project. The proposal cleans up and unifies these older additions which are not in sync with one another. The proposal restores a hierarchy of massing to the central portion of the building and helps define the central axis that exists on the property. And the function of the floor plan is vastly improved. So that's all I have for my presentation. I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Okay, thank you. City staff?
Thank you, Chairman King. This project is before the board this evening. Given the scope of the work, it is a partial demolition, removal of the main roof mass, as well as some subsequent additions to the original structure as was outlined by the petitioner. And also given the association of the structure with Stanley Anderson, who is a noted architect in the community. Stanley Anderson and Stanley Anderson's firm has designed a lot of noted buildings throughout the community. The project that's presented to you this evening does comply with all building scale and setback requirements, as was noted in the summary by the petitioner. And careful consideration of the alterations and changes that are proposed are requested of the board this evening. The petitioner, I think, did a thorough job of outlining what changes have occurred to this structure over time, and how those alterations have compromised some of the interior spaces, the scale of the spaces, and also the overall composition of the exterior. So recognizing that the end product is consistent with traditional architectural principles, it is well designed. The home has sat empty for a number of months. Staff has provided the board with a positive recommendation in favor of this request. I would like to note that the Preservation Foundation did review this request. There is some correspondence for you at your places this evening. Given the correspondence, given the association with Stanley Anderson, I welcome the board's comments and questions regarding this matter, but there are supporting findings in the staff report this evening.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Any questions from the board to the petitioner or staff?
I do. Does a partial demolition fall under the demolition permit criteria or not?
The board can certainly use the demolition criteria to evaluate a partial demolition. The big difference between a partial and a complete is the scope of the project. Is more than 50% of the building, or let's just say less than 50% of the building going to stay? Is the addition that's being proposed change the character of a home? In this case, this was determined to be a partial demolition given the scope of the work. It's not a complete demolition, but there is a significant amount of change. It's not just a simple addition.
I don't think I understood the answer. Is the petitioner actually applying for a demolition permit? Do we even have to go through that criteria, is really what I'm saying?
The demolition criteria
Is that
do apply for the partial demolition, but the
Okay,
request is
I got
not for a complete demolition.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Well, I've got some questions for the architect, please. First of all, like regarding the floor heights, for the existing first floor, I think you said it was 8'4". Do you
Yes.
plan on keeping the first floor ceiling height the
Yes.
same?
Yes.
Okay. And then the second floor ceiling height, I believe you said was 6'7". Is that
Well-
6'7" to the point where it springs from the gambrel?
That's the spring point.
Okay.
And so the ceiling height is about 8 feet, so it springs from a 6'7" wall height.
Okay, and so then that 6'7" until it gets to the 8 feet, about how much does it infringe upon the second floor plate?
About 3 feet.
About 3 feet?
Mhm.
Okay. So then you said you were, in the main body, you were raising the exterior brick wall about 2 feet up to make it a full 8 foot on the second floor, or were you going to make the second floor?
It will be a little bit taller.
Okay.
It's going to be, what we're really doing is basing it off one more coin height on the exterior.
Okay,
And so it's, I don't know the exact number, it's less than 9, but close to 9, 8, between 8.5 and 9 feet.
so you're trying to keep it a consistent masonry dimension?
Correct.
Okay, so the reason that you're changing from a gambrel roof to the hip roof is so that you get a clear, flat second floor ceiling for the most part?
Well, there's several reasons. We actually did look at using the gambrel across the middle. That was actually our first solution.
Right.
Because that's what's there. And it's not our intent to change the character of the house, but as we worked through it, it just seemed like a better solution, because when it really gets down to it, because we're extending the house out to the back with the gallery for circulation, we need to widen the roof. So there's really no way to do that with leaving the existing roof on. It means we need to pull the roof off. And as we looked at it, the logistics of actually doing that and the complexity of, say, even keeping the same 6'7" wall height and putting the gambrel on, it's more expensive, it's more work, it doesn't seem to make sense. It seemed to make sense to put a clean hip roof across. It accomplishes also creating that hierarchy of massing where now the additions are in scale, or much more so. So it was also, it just seemed to be a cleaner solution to have the brick wall continue up in the front rather than having just all the details with flashing around the windows and the wood roof. It's more cost effective, and we think a very clean, nice look too.
Okay, because, that's the only sort of feature that is kind of left of the Stanley Anderson small home. And I really appreciate how you went through the slides and we could see, what was the original Stanley Anderson, which was nice and simple and clean,
Right.
and then how it got jumbled up. So yeah, I think that's probably the question you're here to answer, is like, why did you go ahead and put the hip on it?
And I think that as we look through it, it just looked better, really. It seemed to be a cleaner, simpler solution than just putting the gambrel on. And there would be two ways to put the gambrel on. One would be to keep the ridge line the same, which then we're not solving the massing problem. The other is just to do a larger gambrel. And it's more complicated, and this seemed like a simpler solution. So, and then it also allowed us to bring the flanking gables up the same 2 feet and just have very clean framing.
Okay, so that was one of my other questions. Those two flanking gables, and you're extending those as
Yes.
well? Okay, because I was a little unclear about that. But then, looking at the front elevation, then to the right, where you have where the gun room or whatever that room
Yes.
was, and the garage, you're keeping the gambrel roof
Yes.
on that portion.
We are. And And so we think that that's a nice way to keep the massing more subordinate on that type of the building. We're creating, a wall that says here's the a wall and a tall roof that says here's the main body, here's the front of the main building, and then that wing is subordinate.
Okay. Okay, so, all right. And then the Stanley Anderson stair is also gone. Was it in good condition, or?
There's nothing wrong with it, and I agree, it's a beautiful stair, but it's something you would want in a little cottage. I appreciate all the details that he did in the original architecture and respect everything he's done very much, but it doesn't have a place in the front foyer, especially when you walk in the front door and it's 3.5 feet from the door. You almost trip into it.
So, and then with the brick, you would try to match what is there?
Yes.
And do you feel confident that you could get it
We
close?
can, yes. The original building is a common brick that's been whitewashed. It might have been originally lime washed. It's been painted now, so
Okay.
we would put the same finish treatment on it.
Okay. That's my questions for now. Thanks.
David, I think you accomplished quite a bit with the interior. You really took a Rubik's Cube and you solved a lot with a antiquated Rube Goldberg type of structure. Problem I have is the exterior and the hip and its composition with the gambrel. The character of the home is, front elevation has been significantly changed in one fell swoop. So, and I appreciate the need to raise the height of the second floor. I like the notion of providing the massing over the main living structure. That seems to make sense, feels right, it's balanced appropriately. Different house though. It is a historic design. And have you provided enough effort towards studying increasing the height of the gambrel in lieu of the hip? Do you have the sketches or can you share with us the thought process, the evolution that you and the parks went through in evaluating this and coming to this conclusion that it with the hip? Can we see the interim evolution?
Well, I don't have sketches with me, and I think that we somewhat just had that discussion on, that we originally did study that, and it's an option to do the gambrel. We just felt that it's a cleaner, more cost-effective, makes more sense structurally to put this type of roof on the building. So, and I guess to speak to the notion of changing the Stanley Anderson building, I had a meeting with Paul Bergman, the curator of the Anderson-Tickner drawings, and we looked through this, looked at all the drawings pretty carefully, and had the discussion that Stanley Anderson made his living by doing a lot of changes to buildings, and Paul Bergman's response was that he understands that buildings have to change and that sometimes changes the character. And I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he seemed to be understanding and supportive. So we really don't want to change the character. That's not our intent. And we feel that we're carrying around a lot of the original details around the building, taking some of the dormers and things that are on the rear of the building, where it's the central double-hung window with the flanking side lights with the pitched roof over the central window. We're carrying that through the building, projecting the dormer roof lines, the dormers through the roof at the front of the building, maintaining the symmetry, the balance. And so there are a lot of elements of the original design that are being maintained, although I do realize it's a different look.
Ross, do you have any other questions, or?
Not at this time. Thank you,
Okay.
David.
Just curious, I'm struggling a little bit with similar question as Ross, and that is, could you put in a context, obviously a historic structure, not in the historic district here, what in the past boards have done to address these kind of demolitions/additions? There haven't been many since I've been on the board, and so some direction from staff would be helpful, I think.
I think each request is evaluated on its own merits and the information and design that's presented to the board. Certainly the board has design standards that talk about hierarchy of massing, quality of materials, compatibility with the existing architecture when it comes to approving additions. So I think using the criteria that the board uses for all requests is appropriate in this case. With respect to homes that have historic character that are outside of the district, there are a lot of them in Lake Forest. A lot of older homes that are either have not been locally landmarked by a property owner or fall outside of the boundaries of the historic district. And I think the Building Review Board in the past has, weighed the existing architecture with the standards and evaluated the requests in a similar way.
And I would just add, I think if this house came to us untouched, without the multitude of changes that Mr. Polton reviewed, I think you would have seen staff take a very different position. And I think that's the challenge for the board, to really weigh what has been done to the house over time and what are the important elements to retain, or whether this should move back in the original direction or move forward. So I think the distinction here is that there have been significant alterations over time.
Okay, thank you.
I got a few questions myself. One of the things we're supposed to do as a board is follow the guidelines that are set up for demolition permits and this architectural and design review. I'm having trouble fitting the project into the exceptions under the demolition allowance. Everyone knows you have to wait 2 years. You guys are trying to get through an exception to that, which is fine. I'm trying to kind of find a spot for you, in essence. And I'm having a hard time with that. So I want to kind of, if you want to address that, that's great. You can do that now, or you can wait. And then the other issue is, it seems to me that you're kind of retaining some of the look of the house, but it seems to me that the massing going towards would be, if you're looking at the front door to the right, which I think that's the south.
Front door to the right would be the north.
Would be the north, so the north side. And it seems like the mass itself is enormous, and it doesn't seem to fit the guidelines.
On the right side.
Yeah, and it seems like,
Well, that's been
Oh,
one of our
well, I
main
mean-
struggles. I mean,
well, I totally get that. And
And-
maybe that's a possibility to take a relook at that and sort of make it look like a Stanley Anderson design. Even though it's yours, I get it, but to get past this demolition criteria problem.
well, I guess my concern would be that that's a part of the building that is existing and actually functions okay. I mean, the shell is all right, and we're reworking things inside of it at that point. And so that further takes it towards demolition if we're going to change that part of the building. So that's actually one area we were trying to not touch. We were trying to work within the shell and then attack the problems where they, there were the problems at the main body of the front of the house.
The way I'm trying to fit it into this demolition criteria is it appears to me that the structure has been completely changed through the past as well. I get it. But even more so now, it's gonna be a complete redesign. It's no longer anything in relation to Stanley Anderson anymore. Once you finish it, even though you're putting some aspects in, and maybe I'm trying to do an end around myself, maybe, I don't know what that is, but I'm looking for a spot to stick you to make it compliant. So anything you could do to help me out, that's great.
Well, and I don't know, I might need help from staff on how it does fit into the demolition, because when it is that 50% or less criteria, that's a little bit fuzzy for me too. I mean,
Would you be willing to do that?
Willing to do, I'm sorry.
Talk to staff and kind of figure that out?
I was gonna say, unless you can comment now, I mean, that's what I was getting at.
That's all I got.
Can we see a front elevation, please, on the screen of the existing?
Front of the existing.
Is there an actual photo?
Yes.
I see a little vignette there we go.
That's one view. That's the massing with the addition. And so maybe that's the best view.
So has there been any, in the package, I don't see a landscape plan. Did I miss that?
I don't believe a landscape plan was prepared for this project. There's no changes proposed to the landscaping.
Frankly, I think that's important. This home it's a large site with a deep setback, so the massing of the home can be absorbed by the setting. But what strikes me is the lack of foliage relative to the front court and the hardscape. It's all hard surface. And there's not enough to soften the home, and the proposal is to increase the massing. And I don't know how you address that. Can't snap your fingers and create a 100-year oak. But maybe that's something that can be addressed, working with a landscape designer to soften the massing to a degree.
Is that courtyard, the original kind of courtyard as you come in there, the circle that is
It is.
original design?
Yes, I mean, very much kind of a European courtyard where the gravel almost goes up to the front door.
Mike, do you have any questions at all?
No, I don't have any questions. I just kind of struggle with it, because when you take a look at the building, every elevation on the structure has changed from the original design. So even though it is a Stanley Anderson house, it's not the original structure. So, I don't know. I don't have any questions right now.
What's the height now, and what will it become at?
It will become, well, if you measure from the first floor, it's actually 29 feet. It will become 29 feet, and it's about 7 or 7.5 feet lower than that right now.
Okay, thanks.
I was just going to add a comment. Whenever I look at the original drawing and I look at our proposal, it looks more like the original than this house does to me. I mean, because we're taking away some of the elements of this addition of the front entry that was put on. I think that significantly changes the character. That's not original at all. It's, we're getting a much cleaner look across the front. We're maintaining the windows on the gables exactly as they are. So I think it's one thing to consider that we are actually cleaning this up, even though the wall changes from shingles to brick between the dormers and the roof line gets a little bit higher. I don't think that you're really going to appreciate the height of that very much. It's pretty, this sits way off the road, a couple of 100 feet. It sits down very low. So the building is actually very small scale right now. And I think that the proposed changes are not in any way a massive building. I just think it's more in scale with the overall footprint.
Have you tried to do a roof plan with the center portion just with a gambrel? Like, could you, have the gambrel be at a similar height that the front elevation is now, kind of do a flat portion and then, or you gambrel in the back again, or even do something else in the back, just so that I guess what I struggle with is that that's kind of the only part of the Stanley Anderson portion that's left, is that gambrel, and everything else has kind of been messed with. And so by taking it and making it into a hip, yes, you're creating a nice looking Georgian, but it's not, it's not the original, it's not even kind of tying back in with the original part that made it the Stanley Anderson, which was that gambrel. So I guess what's my long-winded question is, like, did you try a gambrel? And I guess that's what we kind of look for as the board, like, oh, I tried it, it just doesn't work.
Well, we did. We did look at it, and there's always a way to make something work. We could put a gambrel roof on that building. It just didn't seem to be the right solution for all the other reasons that I had mentioned earlier. And I wish I would have brought those sketches with me. I didn't anticipate that was going to be as big of an issue.
For me, plan-wise, I think everything that is being done on the interior, cleaning it up, taking off some of those bulky, poorly made additions on the back, all of that looks really great, and I'm appreciative of the work. I think it's a great job. I just struggle with the main body of the house. So.
Have you had a chance to see the Lake Forest Preservation Foundation letter?
Yes.
Any thoughts on that?
I think we're all saying the same thing, that I think the letter sort of alluded to the fact that we were using an excuse to make the roof line into a hip because we wanted a hip on the building. It's not the case. The building became wider, we needed to put a different roof structure on it, and it just seemed to be the most appropriate. I think the hierarchy of massing is really important on this building, given the nature of the additions, especially off to the north. It's a very massive two-story addition where it wants to be a subordinate wing. So I still stand by our rationale that we're doing the right thing. I think if everyone is, I'm getting the gist that everybody kind of likes us, wants us to explore the gambrel roof, and I'm not sure, how the owners feel about that, but it's something that could be looked at.
Okay. Any other questions at all? Okay. Moving on, now is a chance for the public to come up and testify. Anyone care to take? Okay, seeing none. Any final questions from the board to the petitioner or staff? Okay, seeing none. Now, time to open up this to the board discussion and comment. And Bob, I think I should start with you, because you seem passionate about this.
No, I'm looking for just a way to get past the demolition criteria. And I'm just looking it up right now. There appears to be stuff that can be done. So assuming you get past that, and then we move on to the structure itself, then it's just the architectural review side, which is, I think they're really close to being compliant.
So maybe we should ask for a little help from Kathy and Megan. The demolition portion that Bob's raising, I'm not sure if I understand where he's coming from here, but do you two see any issues with the demolition per our criteria, or does this not hit the threshold, or?
I think, as some of the board members have discussed, the issue before you is really, is it okay to lose essentially what is the last vestige of the Stanley Anderson design? And so that is part of the demolition criteria, to really look at, is there something significant about this house? It is by a significant architect. Is that appropriate to lose? Is the overall character of the home, essentially the replacement additions, are those in keeping with the character of the property? So it's much as you would look at a demolition, and I think this is not an easy one because of the changes that occurred, but I think some of the board members very appropriately pointed out that the new house will not resemble the original Stanley Anderson in any way, and the existing house now does have some ties back to that original design.
Thanks. Okay, I'm sorry, Bob.
And that's my concern. That's really my concern.
Mm-hmm.
Because the community that we have here has a lot of historical properties. And my thought is, God, if there's a way to somehow maintain that look, maybe the gable's gotta go up and the gambrel roof goes up. Everything goes up at the same time. Because it looks like they need a lot of headspace, is what it looks like. And then the one that's to the right of the entryway, maybe that goes up a little bit too. And then maintain the whole thing goes up.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, and I appreciate looking at another gambrel, but if we're just putting a larger gambrel in, isn't that really changing it as well, though? I mean, that,
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
don't know if that really is gonna get it done. I mean, you still were not gonna have the original Stanley Anderson at that point, aren't you?
No. However, I think it would be to everyone's benefit if we did further explore what the options might be with the gambrel raised, or some version of that. Maybe blow the dust off those original sketches, enhance them. Let's take another look at it. There's something is off. Maybe, I mentioned the landscaping. Perhaps some softening, some well-placed plant material, maybe a reduction of that front court. Maybe moving the approach, canting the approach a little slightly. Something is off, and it's bothering the board to the extent that the pieces aren't fitting well, at least at this time.
Can I make another comment? Is that okay?
Please.
Take a look at E2B. If he's listening. What was his name again?
What's E2B?
David.
A to B.
A.
Take a look
Dave,
at.
could you put that up maybe, please? Thanks.
Yeah, take a look at, under the demolition permit, E2B is where I
Oops.
think you gotta go.
I'm sorry, I thought.
It's all right. Basically, I'll read you what it says.
Okay.
You can get exceptions to this demolition statute. They're ors. They're not, you have to make all 5 or 4 or 3 or 2, 1. They're ors. So if you can find one, you can get past it. And this one says, realistic alternatives, including adaptive uses, are not likely because of the nature or cost of work necessary to preserve such structure or realize any appreciable part of such value. You wanna think about that one, and then the next one too. The structure in its present or restored condition is unsuitable for residential or residentially compatible use. And I think that goes to what you were talking about before, where you trip over the staircase when you walk in the front door. Simple stuff like that just doesn't work, and there's really no long-term value. The house won't sell, will stay, unoccupied. There's all that kind of things you can talk about. And then once you get past that, then you can address my colleagues who are a lot smarter on the architectural side of stuff. There is a solution, I'm just saying that.
I think I think I've been pretty clear with some of my comments earlier. I'm very much in favor of the cleaning up of the floor plan. Demoing those other portions and stuff, that's all great, and I'm confident that, the project will get passed in some form. It'll be a wonderful project. I just have concerns that, the last remaining element of Stanley Anderson, who is very important in our community, is kind of gone. And just looking at the second floor plan and the portion of the second floor that's underneath that gambrel, in plan, yes, there's some clipped ceilings, but some of those, that's in the gallery or, the master closet. So I think I just would feel more comfortable at least seeing what the roof form option would be like if you'd keep the gambrel. That way at least we could see it as a board saying, oh, yeah, the gambrel, it just doesn't work, so, but without it being here, I feel uncomfortable about it because he was such an important architect, and that's the best part of the house that's left right now is that, that front elevation with the gambrel. It's charming. And with going with the big hip roof, it's a different home. It'll feel totally different.
I think the other thing is the gables remain intact too from the original design, don't they?
Yeah.
So, when we say that the only things remain is that gambrel roof, that's not the case, because I think we're thinking that we're going to raise those other elements as well. So that's another thing that shouldn't get lost in the shuffle. The staircase, I'm glad you pointed that out, because that entry, are we still gonna have, under the new plans, are you gonna have an enclosed vestibule that comes out a little bit?
Well, we're maintaining the vestibule that's there. We're changing it a little bit, changing the front door. But
Okay. So, don't you have then, in fact, more room than you think there with that staircase, where you wouldn't necessarily have to take out, the staircase, because you go from the entry to the vestibule, you probably got, 8 feet between that and the staircase. And I look at that, compare the new plan, and really there's not a heck of a lot difference between that staircase, the new one as proposed, and the old one. And, things like that, I don't know. I think maybe that perhaps that was due because you had that gallery that you're going into the west with, but to the extent we're trying to save Stanley Anderson type design elements, that's one right there that perhaps we could work with as well.
Well, that's, to put it bluntly, it's going to be a deal killer. The plan doesn't work with that. It's something the owner does not want at all. It's extremely tight. The whole idea is to open up that corridor and create that central access through the house, bringing light in from the front and the rear all the way to the gallery. I can go to the new floor plan, but it's a huge difference in terms of space. So when you walk in the front entry now, it's completely open all the way through the rear of the house, and the stairs off to the side.
Yeah, and that is a nice look, no doubt. Could you replicate that staircase, and just shift it over to the south, or no, or move that perhaps?
It's like a dollhouse stair. It's very, very tiny and tight. I mean, that's the character of this house. Originally, the rooms are very small. Living room is not a bad sized room. It's a decent sized room, but everything else is, low ceilings, low door heights, very, very tight, and it's just out of sync with the scale of the floor plan now. And that's really where we're going with the front elevation too. Even if we can make the gambrel work on the middle of the house, I don't think it makes sense to rebuild a gambrel in the same position and keep it at the same height. I mean, it's huge effort, expense to get right back to the same thing. It really doesn't work very well on the interior of the house. So I think that if we were going to put the gambrel on, we'd want to raise that up again so we get decent ceiling heights on the second floor. And I think that the only difference that people would see driving down the road would be an improvement. They would say, wow, something looks right. There's the massing to the right is now subordinate to the mass in the middle, and not even realize that the gambrel went up 2 feet.
Anybody have any other thoughts, comments?
Other than I'm just slightly uncomfortable about passing it in its present state. I don't know if, I guess I would prefer more to see it go to subcommittee or come back to the board with just, different options of the roof. But that's just my opinion right now.
I think it would be worthwhile to continue it and have them explore the other options that might be available or not available.
I concur.
I appreciate what you're doing. The issues are well documented. House is outdated, and I do like what you're doing to the rear of the house. I think those are nice additions, and taking off that large garden room makes a lot of sense. I kind of agree, though. It would be, I think, a necessary step for us to take a look at some of their options, that front facade, if possible, and maybe we come back to this. I don't know, but I think we owe it to the board and the community to take a little harder look at this and see if there's some other options that we can work with. That's my opinion. So I don't know, Ross.
I agree.
Okay. So, should we put a subcommittee on this, or do you want to come back to the full board after some refinement, or?
I think it's full board.
Full board? Okay. Sounds good. I think we need a move then to continue this.
I'll move to continue this with further exploration of the roof massing to still accomplish your goals and vision while accomplishing our thoughts in part.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your consideration. I know it's a difficult one.
Our next item on the agenda is a consideration of request for approval of the landscape plan associated with Moore Hall at Lake Forest College, located at 555 North Sheridan Road. The owner is Lake Forest College. Representatives are Dave Siebert, Director of Facilities, and Cliff Miller, Landscape Architect. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good evening. It's good to be back again. What we're going to present to you today is the landscape plan for the new residence hall that's currently under construction, actually in the final moments of construction, hopefully. With me is Cliff Miller. I've worked with Cliff since 1993 when the college had its first tree survey done by the Morton Arboretum. Cliff then developed a landscape master tree planting plan in the 90s that resulted in the planting of about 400 trees on the college campus. He was involved with the college's master plan 10 years ago. It sort of that created the framework for the plantings that we intended to pursue in the future, so that we view this as being consistent with what we've been doing for now a very long time. Cliff has also been involved with over $100 million worth of landscape work for the construction that we've performed in the last 12 years. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn you over to Cliff.
Chairman, members of the board, it's my pleasure to be here tonight with you. You can see this section of the South Campus.
I'm sorry, Mr. Miller, could you speak into the microphone?
Sure.
Thank you.
As you can see, this the drawing that you see here represents the northern half of what the is commonly called the South Campus for Lake Forest College. As David alluded to, we a long time ago went through and did an analysis of the conditions that were typical and defined the college in regards to the atmosphere and location, and sort of took what's the historical setting which makes the college special. You know, obviously it's been an integral element of the neighborhood, actually defined the neighborhood since the very beginning. And one of the things that was decided at that time was that the scattering and naturalistic presentation of the overall character of oaks and hickories and maples throughout the campus was a defining sort of a defining element that we found most commonly representing the campus as a whole. And South Campus really varied from a lot of that. It had a lot of earlier disturbance. There wasn't much forest left on that. You can, I think, readily see that north, south, and middle, there's a distinct difference between South Campus versus north and middle. There's more of a historical feel to the northern and middle campuses, but also what we see is the overstory changes. So a lot of work has gone on over the last 20 years, as David points out, trying to bring into this southern campus. There are remnants of the oak forest, especially in the northwest corner here of the South Campus, but we have planted literally hundreds of trees, and I think the comment earlier, can't snap your fingers and get a 100-year oak, pertains to this very well. But as you know, we're here to talk about the landscape for the newly rebuilt Moore Hall, and what we have some challenging conditions here. We have the size of the building, which obviously is not small. We have an athletic field that is directly adjacent to that building. We have to the north existing groves of trees, of which we're adding several too, that help define that character that we talk about and provide a connection to the campuses to the north. This also is where the majority of the students reside, and it becomes an important element of entrance that we wanted to try to strengthen and develop, so that this quad, if you will, would help provide a sense of unity to the campuses to the north. So given that, we have used the spaces that are available to us to develop a landscape through the use of trees that are consistent with other trees found on campus, with a layout, a interrelationship between the groupings. You can see here this central element. We've sort of taken that area that becomes that's the center spine that goes through all of campus, and we've taken this area, and by providing a grove of similar trees, we're mimicking what happens, say, at the entrance to middle campus, where it's a grove of oak that's been reconstructed. Here it's a grove of birch to sort of provide a break and an entranceway element. It's a subtle way to create a point of interest by using a different type of tree than we typically have in other areas. It's also a native tree, which is one of the conditions that we have in our tree master plan, that we utilize native trees when possible. So, in this area, you can see there's probably 10 or 15 new trees that are proposed. In here, we have trees lining the athletic field. We have a hardship here, if you will, based on certainly from a landscape architect's point of view, based on the proximity to an athletic field with the building proper. So we are restricted. However, on this due east side, this existing shrub border and tree border, there really isn't much of a view directly to the east of this building. You'll notice that from the south, you don't really see it much, as you come up Sheridan. As you come down directly north, early on, you don't see it a lot. Where you really pick it up is when you're sort of in this area here, southbound. As you come northbound, you really pass it before it becomes a visible element, and it is, of course, set back across the space of the athletic field. So this is a very large building, but in the space, the way it's presented, you don't read it that way. And I think we went through all of that during the original BRB meetings and others where the building proper was discussed and determined. So our landscape basically just plays with what's already there, plays off of what's already there to continue the rhythm of trees, minimal landscaping on the buildings proper. Here we actually have more landscaping on the building proper than we do at the other buildings because we're using that as a way to strengthen the entranceway to the southern residential quad from the students coming from the north. So we've developed right in this area, you'll see in the detail, that gateway, so to speak, of all the students coming out of here, coming back into and leaving the southern campus. We have also here in this area what's being termed a rain garden, which is this type of treatment of the stormwater management actually exists at Hallis Hall to an extent, has a very similar engineering where it's a dry depression area that's meant to hold water after storm events. It's atypical of what you find in Lake Forest. The idea behind this was to stay away from the college's point of view, to stay away from sort of the corporate pond look and go into something more in keeping with the neighborhood. So we have this depressional area, which you can see is currently already built on site. But what we've done here is we've landscaped it in a way with islands and with borders. You know, some of you may remember the house that used to sit right about here on the site that was torn down at the time the sports center was built to the south of Maplewood there. But, you know, we have worked with the city engineers and Gaywalt Hamilton, our engineers, in developing a curvilinear format to that shape while providing the adequate stormwater storage. We're still landscaping right within this whole structure, and that's an atypical treatment of a system like this. Usually you see these as entirely grass, but we've come in and we've placed these islands here to break that up and to provide, again, a point of interest and a little bit more of a progressive use of plant material in the design of this as a rain garden. This has a subsurface engineered soil and does hold water temporarily. And I think, Dave, what is that, a 48-hour period, 24?
Yeah, it's about 48 hours.
About a 48-hour period where this could hold as much as 4 feet of water in it. So again, from a landscape architectural point of view, it's a real challenge to have plants that can be underwater for 48 hours, and then because they're on an engineered soil, be absolutely bone dry in August. There's very few plants that fit into that criteria, and the ones that we find you know, able to do that are the ones that you see here. So we had the guidelines that are in the master plan of the campus that were developed probably 10 years ago, that are in keeping with the original master tree planting plan and the original goals of the college. We have that as a limiting factor. We have the water that we need to store here as a limiting factor, but we also had to consider these masses in relation to the neighborhood. And that's really where these are born out of, is, you know, taking this large depressional area and breaking it up to make it less of a, you know, for lack of a better word, corporate feel, and more of a residential feel to that area, because again, that was the site of a residential home at one time, and we're sort of honoring that with the layout of that space. So we think that's a real interesting and dynamic treatment of stormwater. It's again, atypical and unusual. The city's looking at the use, I think, that we talked to Kathy about potentially allowing this, or how it might work in other areas. And so you know, we're real pleased with the opportunity to be progressive in the use of management, or not the use of, in the management of the stormwater. So that's what the rain garden is born out of, and this you know, in a lot of places that we've done these types of depressions, they are prairies. They are wild areas. They are meadows. We have those in Bannockburn and Libertyville and other places as well, stormwater managements, and that just didn't fit. You know, after a careful examination of this, we just didn't find that to fit in this place. So what we did is took our goal of utilizing native plants in more organized layouts and architectural formats to create this interaction. Now, what you don't see here is the side slopes and the little mounding and berming that's going on that these forms are fitted to. And so while they seem like they're floating out there, they're really, what they're doing is riding up and over and through these various landforms to soften them and to lessen the impact of that space, which was a very big concern voiced to us early in this whole process, that this expanse needed to be toned down, needed to be reduced in scale visually. And so this is our, what I think, very good solution to that, that we were charged with early on in the process.
Is that it,
Yes.
Cliff? Okay, thanks. Staff?
Thank you, Chairman King. Although this project comes to you as really one piece, the landscape plan is the final piece of the new residence hall, it really is a continuation of work we've been doing for many, many years with the college. Several years ago now, the City Council did approve an overall master plan for the college, and as both Mr. Miller and Mr. Siebert alluded to, that master plan discussed this theme of native plantings, naturalistic theme for the college campus, and really on an ongoing basis encourage the college to be augmenting, replacing the existing tree cover, native plantings, to make sure on an ongoing basis that that overall wooded campus feel would continue. The plan you have in front of you tonight is really the final piece of the new Moore Residence Hall. From the staff's perspective, this plan really has three main features that were discussed at the time the structure came before the board. The first feature is that gateway area into the quad that was discussed. It really is creates a sense of place as students walk on that central spine from Middle Campus. This really will be the first time that as students walk into that area, it really creates an entrance. The board worked with the siting of the building when this project first came before you, and really looked at that area, looked at aligning the building in a way that it worked well with the other residence halls, and that retaining wall also really creates a sheltered area. So that was a key feature. The addition of birch trees in that area really, from the staff's perspective, we think that that's really gonna be a tremendous amenity to the students living on South Campus. The second area is the rain garden. Early in discussions, the idea of doing a rain garden here rather than a standard detention pond came up, and the city really, really encouraged the college to pursue this. We do look at this as a pilot project. We hope to at some point come back to the board and even try to explore smaller versions of rain gardens. For instance, when a demolition is occurring in tighter neighborhoods, you always hear drainage concerns. Are there some ways that we can reasonably encourage residential property owners to do some semblance of a rain garden? So this is going to give us an opportunity to study this, to work with the college. This might not be exactly the final landscape plan, but on an ongoing basis, we will be working with the college to see how this works and make appropriate change outs consistent with the theme as needed. The third and final area is really the perimeter along Sheridan Road. Again, the board worked hard to site this new residence hall in a way that there's no point on Sheridan Road where you get the full impact of the building. So working with the college to continue to maintain and enhance that screening along the west side of Sheridan Road to maintain that wooded streetscape is really important. So we believe that all three of those elements are covered very well in this plan. This isn't a one and done in working on this plan. As I mentioned, we work closely with the college on a continuous basis on landscaping in various areas and looking at perimeter areas. One condition is recommended that just simply acknowledges that on-site there may be some change outs, and with the city arborist's approval, if certain species aren't available or if some plantings don't seem to work, that we would be consistent with the theme but allow that change out. Staff does recommend approval, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Kathy. Any questions or requests for clarification from the board?
What is the thought behind the diameter of the trees, the new trees? I notice there's quite a few that are the bur oaks that are, and the sugar maples that are 2.5 inches. Is there any, what drives the diameter decision?
Well, typically, with oaks and some of the other species, usually we find a higher level of success moving a younger tree, a healthier tree, and reducing the strain in the move than moving a large tree. Studies have shown that, say, a 2.5-inch tree will surpass a 6-inch tree over a period of a decade or so in size because of the fact that it goes through a lot less stress. So we try to move the smaller trees when we can. We've moved some very large trees on campus. For example, at the Sports Center down to the south, we moved 12-inch sugar maple. And if you go there today and look at them, they're struggling and fighting and trying to stay alive, where the 4-inch maple that we planted are flourishing and growing and already getting up quite a bit larger, probably 20% larger than they were when we planted them 2 years ago. So that's the reason that we use the smaller trees, especially when you get into oaks. We just have a lot better success when we go to the smaller calipers. And that's really something we work on with the city arborist and have discussed with them over a period of several years on several projects.
Is there a fine line, or does a 3 or 4-inch oak still benefit from the growth, the health, and the big vitality as well as a 2.5-inch?
Well, there's definitely a difference between a 2.5 and a 4, but a 2.5 and 3, obviously from the size that we're talking about, it's not a great difference. Probably more importantly, it's the root ball size that determines, and that typically the ratio of tree size to root ball is higher in the smaller trees. They have less root loss in the nurseries. So it is a fine line, and it gets stronger as you go higher. But we try to use, there's several trees in there that are 3.5-inch on the plan. So what we're doing is using a variety of trees within that range so we don't end up with all the same size trees going in all at once. And we can't go much bigger. We use the evergreens to do that by going 12, 14 feet, that kind of stuff, where they get more mass. Again, you can see that in the front of the sports center. So we use very large evergreens to give us a little bit of contrast to the smaller trees and what's there. Plus, as you can see, we have dozens of trees already there, so we're able to play off of that as well. And then the birch, they're clump trees, so they're not basically, and we're able to get bigger with those because they just move easier, and so they have some mass to them, more height, and because they're clump, they size differently than, say, a single tree. You might have 3 2.5-inch trees acting as one. So it's a carefully thought out mix considering the, what we're trying to do, the variance in the plant material, and the limitations of successfully moving these types of trees.
Thanks.
Is it common on campus at the dormitories that there isn't a lot of foundation planning around the buildings?
Yeah, for the most part, we try to maintain as little foundation planting as possible, mainly for the reason of, as traditional campus buildings on the campus, they had very little landscape to begin with, and typically what we have we have a percentage of a much higher lack of planting than we do to the planting proper. We use that planting then when we do have it to strengthen the entranceways and locations and, sort of the presentation to the campus as a whole. So that's typically why we don't have what we would consider to be residential landscaping on the campus.
And then, when the building itself came in front of the board, one of the concerns that we had was just the height and the massing
Right.
Of the building itself. And the northern face of the building, I noticed that you have like one shingle oak, which is kind of close to where the stairwell will be, but then there's nothing really at that foundation or at the northeastern corner, which I think is really fairly prominent on site. Is that something that you looked at addressing at all? Because I'm just a little worried that you're screening it well from Sheridan, except for, I think, is that rosemary that comes from the east, and then you can look directly at that corner, and there's
The northeast
nothing green
corner.
there. Yeah.
Again, this is a difficulty in the siting of the building originally. From a landscape architectural, the reality of it is that's an athletic, that's a line. If you look north-south along that, that's sort of the edge of the soccer field, so to speak. Any canopy going out over that, you can't have that going over the ball field. You also have the proximity of the trunks of the trees to players on the field and that sort. So I would love to have 3 or 4 more trees there, but there physically just is not the room to do that while maintaining the athletic field in combination. And that was one of the areas that we just had trouble, as you say, when we were first looking at the spotting of the building. Obviously, you can see it's a larger building than any of the other buildings there. It was hard to determine where that fit best. I remember us going through that process with you earlier. And that is one of the areas where, quite frankly, if we had a little bit more room, you bet we'd take care of it, and have more there. But it's just limiting as to what we can do, given the fact that we have an athletic field literally right off that corner.
Okay, so like no little smaller shrubs or anything? I mean, I'm not saying like big, huge tree trunks, but...
Well, we can, again, it's a 4-story facade. We could put something like that on it, but the reality of that actually doing a lot to softening it is pretty minimal.
Okay.
So certainly we could do that without interfering, and that would be something that Dave might want to look at or could look at. But given the way we normally deal with those buildings in those types of settings, it just didn't make sense. We didn't have room to get anything in there.
Okay.
The scale of the building, as you all know, makes some of this very difficult in relation to the athletic field and the rest of the campus area.
Right, because, yeah, it's like 3 stories at that
Right.
corner.
Right.
Okay.
But now, fortunately, along that same, as you go further to the northeast, we have the existing groves of trees, which, as you're southbound on Sheridan, really play well into toning that down. Because, a lot of the residents, including myself, were wondering how this building was going to present itself on the campus there. And I drive by here almost every day. And I was surprised at how it presented itself, as the scale, knowing the size of this building, how it fits in there. I was surprised at how little of it really affected me from a point of view of driving by saying, hey, I don't, wow, what's this? But that corner is one that I would have liked to had 20 more feet.
Well, it looks as if along Sheridan Road at that intersection, there are some gaps. Could you perhaps do some landscaping over there that might minimize the...
Whoop, I'm shining myself.
Right
Do
there.
you mean right in here?
Yeah,
Yeah, we have, it gets tricky. Now, we did this, we started along that corridor with Dan Reeves when he was the forester, probably 20 years ago. That little section there, there is no parkway proper. You have it's a very minimal. You have the hedge. There is a hedge that exists all along there that screens most of the view, certainly from a car as you drive up and down that section. This is a 6-foot-high hedge coming all the way around here that stops the field, that keeps the people in the field off of the street and the sidewalk, and it's a dense wall. The field comes right to that very edge, then you have the hedge, then you have the sidewalk, then you have a very tight parkway, and then you have Sheridan Road. It's also the inside of a curve with, as you could see, Rosemary Road coming in here, so you have an intersection here, and there was concerns about sight lines. So we put as many trees as we thought we could in there probably 20 years ago. And Dan and I worked together with David trying to get that to be just what you're saying, and that was before we even had Moore Hall rebuilt. Those trees died. It's a very difficult site to grow in. The west side of the fence, the athletic field comes right to the edge. There is no room for additional trees in that area. Any tree planted would then canopy over it. But as you can see, we have planted several trees in this area and are, still planting more. We are proposing, plants down in here where we have more room. But really in this section from here to here, if you drive by and take a look at that, the room between the curb, the sidewalk, the hedge, and the athletic field, there's just no room.
So there is a continuous hedge in that open spot?
Yes.
Those two open
Yeah,
spaces?
right.
How tall is that hedge?
Probably 6 to 8 feet.
At least 6 feet. We've actually been working over the years to thicken it as much as possible too. You're seeing some of the progress now based on what it was.
So if you're walking on that sidewalk, you can't see into the campus at that point. And that runs, we removed it down here to create more of a vehicular, to open up the vehicular access to South Campus, because there really never was one. You used to drive back in there to get to the hockey field or to the sports center, but, it looked like you were going down a backdoor route. So we removed, because of the density and because of the screening, we took the southern section out so that you could see more into the campus as you approach and get a better strength of entrance at that point. So, the reason we removed it, it was too strong. But up through here, it goes from about here all the way up into right about there, if I remember. Right into, it sort of dies out in that grove of trees that are there. Pretty much lines the entire athletic field. Terminates, and here's the end of the field right here. These trees that we're showing here are sort of pushing into the parameters of that. We, again, trying to reduce the impact. In this case, you could see the driveways coming off here, and these trees are specifically to try and help tone down that from the residences across the street that do have more of a, other than a passing view of this structure.
So how close is the athletic field to that building corner, would you guess? I mean, I can see it on this drawing, but it looks to me like it's, 15, 20 feet maybe?
Yeah, exactly.
15 to 20 feet.
And so we have the issue with,
There's just no plant material or nothing that you think you could get in there that could soften that corner?
well, we have two problems. One is the width of the tree, without it getting into being a bean pole,
Sure.
like in front of the 222 building on Wisconsin, there you had those three. They actually draw more attention than they do screen because of that form. But the other problem is it's just physically kids playing, running, tripping, falling, pushing each other, and the concerns for just hitting the trees. So we could come in and develop, this with fastigia trees that stay extremely narrow. But the thought is that those are just contrary to anything else we have on campus and actually draw attention rather than reduce it. Nolan is a large structure completely redone. We have several on the campus, and really, they sort of meld into the landscape over time just because they're consistent. It follows from North Campus at Sheridan all the way down. You have Durand Hall all the way up there at the north. It's wide open to the street, and it's beautiful. And that same sort of thing works its way all the way down to South Campus. So, I do understand the concern about that corner, but because, again, of the restrictions and limiting factors, we just don't find, other than growing something on the building itself, which for maintenance purposes is not something that the college wants to get involved with, you know.
Also, the edge of the rain garden, at about this point, is right at the edge is the end of the end zone for this field. So literally, and in a rugby game, you go beyond that to score, so we haven't figured that one out yet. It's a gentle slope, but literally the field is sandwiched into this area. It's not that we don't want to put more plantings there, it's just that they're not really practical when you have really the crowd, if there is a crowd, practice people, coaches in this area here. And we're just counting primarily on the trees at the corner to grow into that corner.
I could offer that if you wanted to add a condition that directed staff on an ongoing basis to work with the college, whether it's screening, looking at enhancing to the extent we can that screening along Sheridan Road, but it's certainly something we can look at. Since the building has taken shape, we really have not heard concerns from residents in the area or passersby. In fact, I think people have been pleased with the kind of the sporadic views that they get of the building. But certainly, as a condition, you could ask that we continue to work on that area.
Any other questions?
Big question for the staff. Is it the planting plan that they're presenting just addresses the improvements for Moore Hall and not the master forestry plan? That's a separate thing.
Correct. The overall master plan, which calls for replanting, which directs us to continuously work with the college on cleaning up or enhancing some perimeters, that's something we work with the college on an ongoing basis.
And a couple questions for you, Cliff, on the rain garden, where you had mentioned that the form-fitting plant material over the berms. So will some of that plant material go drape over the side of the berm facing Sheridan Road? And if so, I mean, what would that be? It's probably not gonna be that same water-tolerant plant material.
Yeah, let's see if we can get that on. What we did, you know, again, the limiting factors on that are, you know, the fact that you're going to have stuff that's underwater, perhaps 4 feet of water, then bone dry in August. Then you get up on the berm, your level of compaction, you know, you leave the engineered soils and you go into heavily compacted clay soils. And then when you get to the east side of that, you get to what we call the virgin soils, which are original to the site. So, you know, we have this hydrologic condition that you bring up. We also have these soil conditions and light that changes dramatically as we move from this denser zone into there. Yes, as we roll over, like this planting up here is almost entirely plants that don't want to get wet all the time, and they are on the roll over the side of the, you know, the line is on the interior of these plantings, not the exterior, whereas these are on the interior. These plants here really are at the sort of the bottom of the embankment, or not embankment, but the bottom of the rain garden, and then these trees are all above the rain garden. So the turf rolls right over. Here where we jump above, these areas in here, especially like this whole area is above the water level and will be rarely, if ever, underwater. And if so, it'll be the shortest duration. You know, if you have up to 4 feet of storage, it's a 48-hour period. You have 24 hours with 2 feet of water, 12 hours with 1 foot of water. You know, so it drops fast depending where you're at. So this are plants as is this here and some of that are a mix of those as they drop down can take the water. Obviously, the ones in the bottom can take you know, inundation. I will point out that there is really no plant that's, you know, a cure-all for this type of situation. This is a very difficult condition for any plant to grow well in, and we've done a lot of research and a lot of, you know, changing the depths of the engineered soils and the specifications to make this a more plant-friendly ecological setting. And we have chosen these plants very carefully based on their ability to handle this complete extremes in conditions. But one of the things we've done, as you mentioned, we've changed the varieties we roll over. We've also changed varieties, not just based on the water, but based on sun and also on the soil conditions.
So when you're driving down Sheridan Road, and I mean, I don't think most people are gonna see the bottom of that basin, but you will see the berm.
Right.
So what will we see? Will that be plant material or turf or?
Most of that, from the Sheridan Road view, most of that will be turf. We don't want to wall. We didn't want to wall that off. We want to keep the view shed going through there. We wanted to soften it, but not eliminate it, because this is, again, this view shed right through here is the beginning of the main entrance to South Campus's vehicular view shed. So you can see the signage, so you can see the buildings. Throughout the course of the many years that I've been involved with, one of the biggest problems we have with South Campus, especially for visiting sports or people, is they blow right by it. They don't see it till they're past it. And so we went to great lengths to open up this corridor, the visual corridor. As I said, the house was taken out in order to open up that corridor. The hedges were taken out to open up that corridor. So we have this sort of duality that we're working with here, and that is to reduce the impacts of this open corridor, of this reduction in the, not reduction, but in the basin proper, while still maintaining a corridor. So primarily, these are the plantings that you'll see that are above, right in this area in here, and these right up there, these trees. But you will see most of that is gently rolling turf going up and over.
So the plant material isn't coming over the berm. It's just gonna be turf, is what you're saying?
Except for this southern end, which is entirely up on that berm and coming downward. So this planting here is on the street side of that. And this planting here is on the upper part, is on the street side, and this is on the uphill side.
So on the street side from Sheridan Road, what?
Yeah, the hedge begins right here.
Yeah, so half of that, you
Yep.
don't even see because it's behind the hedge.
No, but if you're going northbound on Sheridan and you're looking across and you see that, you see the berm.
You see that.
But you're saying that you will have some plant material to kind of, because right now, I know you're just graded and everything, but it does look like a man-made berm.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if there's any way that you, with landscaping or something, you might make that so it doesn't look so unnatural.
That's why that's exactly the reason for this heavier planting right in this area, is that is what you initially see coming northbound as soon as you get, So we did sacrifice our view shed there to address that bang-on view coming north into that basin. One thing I would like to point out, and again, this is the limiting factors of the site. These two trees are existing sugar maples of medium age that probably are the best conditioned trees in that entire zone, including the old trees that are there. And they were sort of flanking the house when it was torn down. And part of the reason that roll is not softer on the street side is because we were trying to protect as much of the root system as we could of those two trees. So given that we were required by the engineering and staff to provide a certain amount of storage of water in that area, we really had to push it. And quite frankly, as a landscape architect, I had to kind of fight to keep those two trees in the picture. But that did increase that roll effect. So I'm very aware of what you're saying. And this lower planting does help address that coming up from the north on Sheridan.
Okay. And then, I know that parking lot's been used, well, it's been a construction pad for many years and is now getting turned into a parking lot.
Correct.
And is this landscaping sufficient to screen that? Because I know that we've really said that there's like 3 elements to this, but there really is a 4th element, isn't that the parking lot?
I really can't believe that you can see it from Sheridan Road.
Well-
And it's definitely not after this work takes place.
I'm not really, maybe it's not Sheridan Road, but, Maplewood, which is becoming, basically a sea of parking once you get past the
Right.
fitness center. And I didn't know if, what do we have in here? There's one basswood. I just asked a question, is that sufficient? Was that taken into consideration, I guess?
Well, I understand what you're asking. The difficulty of that is defining, what you mean by sufficient. If, the screening that is in place here, like these viburnum prunifoliums that are down there on that corner, those are plants that are going to be 15 foot wide and high. So there's a border to the Sheridan Road side that is being developed loosely through this zone while accommodating the traffic and use coming up through that. That's a fire lane up through this section here. So from that point of view, from toning down, you're looking through here several trees. There's probably 20 new trees in this area. You're looking through a lot of that at the parking. But then you have this band in here of smaller plants that are put in to accommodate that. So is it toned down from Sheridan Road? Yes. If you're on Maplewood directly south of this, is it toned down? It's exactly what you see today. We have no additional plantings between Maplewood at the sports center looking due north into that parking lot. However, that is a heavily treed area. But no, there is no screening in that area. So as it addresses the Sheridan Road view, I think this is adequate. Again, given time for these plants to mature and grow in. But there are no proposed plantings on any other side of the parking lot.
I would also mention that the size of the parking lot relatively is quite small. It's defined by the drip lines of the trees that surround it, so that there is still a sufficient different distance going south from the parking lot that would be usable parking space if they're in the drip line of the trees along Maplewood. I would also like to mention that the college is very much aware of what we're doing here, and this is a commitment on our part, not unlike the commitment of improving the entrance at North Campus and then Middle. This is actually the third piece of that. We're very concerned about the drive and the entrance into the college from Sheridan Road, and so we have quite a vested interest in maintaining the look of this, which is one of the reasons why we wanted to explore this as opposed to a large pond.
Yep. I can appreciate it. It's a turf bottom, so is that a mowed bottom, or you just let it, it's natural? It is mowed?
It'll be all mowed turf. The idea was to keep it very similar to what you see in the rest of the campus, especially from the streetscape at, where you're in college or Illinois and the other parts along. When you have that expanse of grass with the scattered trees providing a setting for the buildings. That's the same sort of thing here, although it's been augmented with plantings to reduce the visual impact. And a lot of that was at the request of the city staff that we work gently into this mode of detention and trying this, as we shifted from entirely a native wild planting into more of, for lack of a better word, a neighborhood approach to this layout.
Any other questions? Okay. Now's a chance for the public to testify, if anyone's here. Seeing none. Any final questions from the board to petitioner staff? Okay. Time to discuss. Any thoughts? Comments?
I appreciate the fact that the college works so well with the city, and there's the ongoing plan, including this.
Yeah, I agree, Bob. Clearly, a lot of thought and effort's gone into this plan, so we appreciate
The continuity.
yes. Yeah, and I think the end product is going to look great. The residence hall is looking very nice, and the willingness to try this rain garden and almost come an incubator for the rest of the city is fantastic as well. So we do appreciate those efforts.
And Kathy made a nice suggestion regarding requesting staff to continue to work with the college with regard to the plant material along the hedge and focusing on species and size, quality.
Sure. Okay. So does anyone move for approval?
Yeah, I'll do it. I move to approve the petition of Lake Forest College, the landscape plan associated with the new residence hall, Moore Hall specifically, based on the findings as stated, in the staff report dated July 9th, 2013. The complete staff report, the materials included in the packet, and the public testimony are incorporated as part of the findings, and then the conditions that were discussed today.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Passes. Thank you very much for your efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Probably going in next week.
This is now, the next agenda item is the opportunity for the public to address the board on any non-agenda items. Seeing none. Any information from staff, Kathy?
I believe, as we spoke earlier, your August meeting date has been changed because your regular meeting would be on Lake Forest Day. I believe it's on August 8th, but I would encourage, we will certainly get in touch with you, and I'd encourage anybody to check the website. But I just wanted to note it is not on the regular meeting date.
You can check for me in the beer garden on that date, not the rain garden. All right, anybody move for adjournment?
I so move.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, adjourn, thank you.